couples come back 6 months later and they look different. And there's just this amazing growth in their relationship.
Hope from despair.
Exactly.
And the dreaming comes back into the relationship. You know, when you think about when you first get married, we're going to have this great life together, everything's going to be so perfect, we're going to go vacations and do this and that, and then that stops because of our differences. So if we get on the same page, the intimacy can come back into our relationship. It's so exciting to see.
And the flip side is, if you don't communicate about these things, in your book you talk about the couple becomes entrenched in toxic secrets, control. Like, I was reading through the book and going, how many of the 70% of the divorce, they're hiding their spending, they're hiding their purchases in the closet, right? They've got these credit cards, they have gambling addictions. And what kind of relationship can you have with those kinds of toxic secrets in your marriage?
That's right. We just got asked, last week, there is a woman and she's actually a hoarder. That's her addiction. And so the spouse assumed that that person was a spender. I said, you know what, we need to get the addiction taken care of, and you may find that she's a security seeker and that she's not a spender. So addictions really kind of need to be worked on and figured out, and then you can get to the true person who God has made you in terms of your money personality. But you have such a good point there. It's just so easy for those secrets and things to happen. How can you have a close relationship if you have secrets in the middle of it? That's just not possible. It's not rocket science.
Well, and it's just so prevalent in society. I mean, there's a commercial that comes on every Christmas, and I hate it because it's someone that's sneaking upstairs and basically hiding some packages that they bought so their spouse won't see it. And I just sit there and go, oh, what message is that sending? That's not only, I mean, it is normal in relationships, but it's not right in relationships. And that's part of what we have to back up. We have some friends of ours, some dear friends of ours, and we were at dinner, and she says, well, tell them the bra story, money. And I was like, did she just say bra at dinner? And Beth's like, yeah, she did. Just go with this. This will be good. And so what had happened was he wanted to start a business. And so he sat down with a business plan with her and said, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we can make it work. We need $10,000 to start this business. Well, she just got up and came back with this wad of cash. And when they took the time to count all this cash, it was about 11 grand in cash. Wow. They'd been married for about 9 years. And he looked at her and he said, what? Where did this come from? She goes, well, it's my bra money. And he said, could you explain that? And so now every man that's watching this show is going to be going through their wife's bra drawer after this show. But basically, in her culture, the Italian culture, any leftover money, they just stuffed in their bra, and then they would save that and put it in their drawer when they got home. And it was kind of like their secret stash of cash. So on one point, he was ecstatic because they could start the business. On the other point, he was like, wow, that's a lot of money for me not to know about in a relationship. So it's not only these huge negative connotations, but there's also these things that happen that maybe happen with the best of intentions, but it's still a lack of communication, which is the key.
Should there be such a level of communication and trust that the right thing is always a joint account?
Okay, and that's
a great question.
A lot of times people will say, should I have my own credit card, my own checking account, my own debit card, or do we have to have it all together? And what we say is that really isn't the main issue, if it's separate or not. It's, are you communicating about what's coming in and going out? So we have something called a money huddle. And what this is where you get together on a regular basis. We started every 2 weeks, but now we do ours every month. But we have couples start with every 2 weeks to understand what's coming in and going out. Because on a practical basis, having your own money is a good thing or can be a good thing. But does the other person know what's coming in and going out? So the communication is what's key.
You know what I loved about your money huddles, and you say you look forward to them.
Yeah, we
yes,
do.
we do. We didn't used to.
No, we used to hate them.
It's because it's your football sports need, isn't it?
Right, exactly. It doesn't happen on Sundays.
I think it was your point, Scott, that you could be sitting at the computer and just doing the accounting responsibly in a trustworthy way. But because you meet together and look at where things are at and are both aware of it, you can dream together.
Absolutely.
You can have the big picture goals.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we're not talking about, because oftentimes in a relationship there is a financial person. A person who either likes to do it or leans towards those financial things. So we're not saying that they can't do that and you have to do everything together. We're talking about is just having a meeting with a quick review of what's going on. here, this is money's coming in and going out. Oh, didn't we want to save for that trip next year? We better cut back here a little bit and get into an agreement about it, and then it'll happen. The challenge is we have budgets, but one person put the budget together and there's not mutual buy-in.
And that's where the breakdown happens. Another great thing about this, the fights get crazy, but the great thing about this too is people think, well, I mean, the money couple's coming in here and they're telling me that we have to have money huddles and we have to do pros and cons and we're just going to be talking about money all the time. Are they insane? No, we're not. Well, maybe we are a little bit. But,
Talk after.
yeah, well, I'll tell you stories which will convince you that I am. But what happens is you start talking about money less. Because you always have one person in the relationship, especially when there's financial stress, that's just blah, 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 blah about money all the time. Well, I mean, how much was that? How much was that? Yeah, yapping in your ear, and you're like, ugh. So what happens is that's why we shut down. But when you're on the same page and you're being transparent, you talk about it so much less. It's a little painful at first. When we first got married, we had a little bit of a financial blunder. We went about $30,000 in credit card debt without even really understanding what we were doing. We're 6 months into our relationship, and we're sitting there going, wow. We're financial planners. Yeah, we are winners. And
But we're positive.
but we're positive.
And you're alive.
That's right. And you can breathe for free, and most of the time. And so, but that put us on our journey with saying, hey, how do we talk about money? How do we keep our relationship strong? So we are the epitome of the couple that got way over their head, weren't communicating about money. She was doing her thing. I gutted a kitchen as a surprise. Men, if you're watching the show, don't ever do that, ever. But we've made those mistakes. But we were able to come closer and really have such a strong foundation because we've done it wrong.
And you're still living in such a real world that your book includes a chapter on how to have a fair fight.
That's right.
Yeah.
About money.
That's exactly right. Fighting fair. And there are 4 keys and steps to fighting fair. Let's face it, the way that our relationship gets torn apart and intimacy gets out of it is by the fights. It's the fighting, it's the meanness, it's the you did this, and the crossed arms, and that's, but if we can learn how to fight in a way that's going to bring us together, I mean, imagine. There is a way to do it, and we outline that in First Comes Love, Then Comes Money.
You know, I like what Moira said about the trust thing, because I think what it's going to take is to trust one another and forgive. You say in your book that after all is said and done, all the debt that you've racked up, or all the blunders about redoing a kitchen, you got to forgive. You got to let it go and trust the person. Now, that's very difficult, because for some people, it's like, that's massive. Like, you completely, you know, leveled us, and our family is in dire straits.
Yeah.
But you really talk about that it has to take that if you're gonna, you know, save your marriage, to talk and say, I forgive, and have to really rebuild that trust again.
You
That's
have to.
hard though.
It's brutal because someone might be sitting there saying, we have to retire 5 years because you made that crazy land deal, and guess what? You can't build anything on that land. There's all these aspects, and we deal with this as people come in, but the reality is you cannot move forward if you're looking back. And you have to make that decision. And we sit down with couples, and it breaks our heart, but we'll sit down with a couple and we'll watch them leave, and we'll look at each other and go, they are not gonna make it. Because we can see that they're not willing to let go. But letting go and reestablishing that trust can just fundamentally change your relationship and make it so much better. And what an amazing opportunity to even teach your kids about, hey, mom and dad made a mistake, we're fixing it, we're getting back on our feet, and this is how we're gonna change as a family. And what happens is when those kids are in that same situation, which they will be, they'll come to you and say, Mom and Dad, how did you guys get out of this? So
great modeling.
Yeah, and it's what you need to do.
We met with one couple, and we met with them for 2 45-minute sessions. The first session they met, and they just arms crossed. There's no way I'm going to forgive about the past. And they just, when they left, we watched them leave our offices, and they just went to their separate cars and didn't even talk to each other. But then they came back, and they had done a money dump. They wrote the pros, the cons. They figured out 2 things that they were going to work on. We talked to them a little bit about it, and when they left, we watched them out the window, and they were kissing, and they were hugging, and it was just so sweet to know. But there was mutual buy-in. They both wanted to improve, and if you both want to, and you use some of the principles we talk about, oh, it's so exciting because the dreaming starts and the fun comes back in, and it really can have a great relationship.
You pack so much wisdom into this book. Where can people pick up a copy of your book?
We have at all the Christian bookstores, and then also on Amazon.com. Also on our website, themoneycouple.com. You can pick it up there as well.
Right.
How long have you been a couple?
12 years.
Did you see they started out holding hands?
I
we
know.
still-
Yes.
I know.
Oh,
And
I
you
was gonna
have
say she'll fight fair for us just to
She's-
show us. No, we won't.
Forgive
we won't.
me.
So we don't fight about money anymore. I just call her and say, "Oh, wow, did I make a mistake?"
Recently, we have a fun story we put on our website about that too.
Oh yeah,
Just
it
recently.
involved Best Buy in a huge
Huge
debacle.
yeah.
So,
it sounds good. Maybe we should all visit your website.
Absolutely.
What is your website, by the way?
It is themoneycouple.com.
Themoneycouple.com.
We have a lot of free tools on there. People can
a lot of resources
a
that
lot
we
of
want to make available.
resources, and we have something called the Money Couple Minute, where every 2 weeks you can get a little tip on how to help your financial relationship, and it's a lot of fun and a great way for couples to come together.
Well, Bethany and Scott, thank you so much for being with us and for bringing your book to our attention and giving us all a lot to think about and chew on. And if you want more information on what they're about, just visit our website at crossroads.ca, and we'll have a link over to The Money Couple as well.